Anthropic launches first public Mythos AI model. Developers chasing full autonomy will hit the guardrails first. Claude Fable 5 locks out cybersecurity and biology workflows entirely. That split pushes research teams toward models without the same blocks, likely shifting grant-funded work away from Anthropic within the next year as labs seek fewer refusals on critical experiments and model comparisons. The safety choice protects the brand but narrows the addressable market faster than competitors who offer tiered access, forcing a choice between compliance and capability for mid-size labs. Mastercard unveils AI agent payment system. High-velocity agent transactions expose gaps in traditional settlement rails that banks have ignored until now. Agent Pay opens always-on micropayments across the network, but the real pressure lands on fee structures once autonomous agents start routing around high-cost corridors. Visa must now decide whether to match the speed or accept lower share on machine-initiated volume from agent fleets. The trajectory points to compressed margins for card networks within 18 months as agent volume scales. Visa partners with OpenAI for agentic payments. Direct access to OpenAI agents changes the settlement game for everyone else on the network. Visa's tools now sit inside ChatGPT workflows, which means Mastercard has to accelerate its own agent APIs or lose the first wave of autonomous checkout volume within the next 6 quarters. Transaction data flowing back to OpenAI also creates a new competitive moat that pure payment players cannot match without similar model partnerships on top of the volume shift. Neura Robotics lands record $1.4 billion Series C. Tether's involvement points to crypto cash hunting physical AI exposure beyond data centers. The capital lets Neura scale humanoids fast, yet the deeper consequence sits with Amazon and Nvidia locking in supply commitments that smaller robotics firms cannot match on sensor or actuator tech. Expect warehouse automation deals to favor Neura platforms by late next year as backers exercise their influence on integration priorities at scale. Talent will follow the capital within quarters. Amode calls for stronger AI government regulation. Amode is handing regulators the precise levers they lacked last year. Expect the EU AI office to test those powers on a US model within 6 months. That single precedent would require every frontier lab to maintain a parallel compliance track for European deployments. Smaller teams without dedicated policy staff will either partner with legal firms or exit the highest risk categories entirely. The cost of that split infrastructure has not yet appeared in any public roadmap. OpenAI exposes PRC influence operations on AI policy. OpenAI's disclosure quietly reveals the volume of policy queries those accounts generated before detection. U.S. agencies will now treat model providers as mandatory censors for influence ops. That shifts the compliance burden onto every company releasing weights or APIs. Expect Anthropic and Google to publish their own takedown numbers within the quarter to avoid appearing less vigilant. The real operational change is the new review layer on politically sensitive prompts. China updates rules for AI model training data. China's new blueprint sets volume and provenance requirements that foreign training runs cannot meet without local partners. Labs outside China must now decide whether to license data through state channels or build separate domestic-scale datasets. The first visible effect appears in the next round of model benchmarks. Chinese labs will report training on fully compliant domestic corpora, while others face gaps. This accelerates the split between two incompatible AI data ecosystems by late 2025. Supermicro seeks $7 billion to fulfill AI orders. Supermicro's order backlog already exceeds its current manufacturing capacity by more than double. The equity raise simply buys time before component lead times stretch further. Nvidia and AMD will face allocation pressure as Supermicro's purchases crowd the queue for the same GPUs. Enterprise customers should expect longer delivery windows and higher spot prices starting next quarter. Smaller system integrators without similar scale financing will lose bids they previously won on speed. Apollo closes $35 billion Anthropic infrastructure deal. Blackstone's participation changes the risk profile for every other frontier lab. Traditional infrastructure funds now treat AI compute like regulated utilities with predictable returns. With dedicated capital this large, Anthropic can lock in multi-year chip contracts that smaller players simply cannot match. The result shows up in training runs by early 2026. Expect OpenAI to either raise another comparable round or watch its relative model performance slip against a better-funded rival. Margins on API calls will compress as a direct result. Study forecasts $310 billion agentic e-commerce by 2036. European platforms face a quiet disintermediation. Once agents handle the full purchase path, comparison engines lose their traffic advantage, and marketplaces must either integrate agent APIs or accept lower take rates. The €310 billion figure assumes seamless checkout, yet banks and card networks will see interchange revenue squeezed as agents optimize for lowest fees. Shopify and Amazon's EU teams are already modeling the scenario where agent-mediated sales bypass their standard seller dashboards entirely. FSB outlines 12 practices for responsible AI in finance. Model risk teams inside global banks now face a mapping exercise that goes well beyond current SR 11-7 requirements. The practices emphasize data lineage and outcome monitoring, which means vendors selling AI governance tools see immediate RFP spikes. Mid-sized institutions without dedicated AI compliance staff will likely outsource the entire framework, handing consultants a multi-year revenue stream. Larger players must decide whether to disclose their internal audit findings publicly to demonstrate alignment. XAI faces legal risks over data center turbines. Local opposition in Mississippi highlights a broader constraint the industry has ignored. Permitting timelines for on-site generation now exceed chip lead times. XAI must either redesign around grid power with uncertain availability or accept higher costs from diesel backups during construction. Other AI developers scouting southern sites are quietly adding environmental counsel to their real estate teams as a result. The knock-on effect appears in 2026 capacity forecasts that suddenly look optimistic.